If someone had told Amaka Jacob that missing her bus that rainy Tuesday morning would change her life forever, she would have laughed and kept walking. After all, people didn't meet the loves of their lives in broken elevators. They certainly didn't meet Korean billionaires who looked like modern-day princes, and they definitely didn't expect those strangers to become the neighbors living just across the hallway. But life has a strange way of hiding miracles inside ordinary moments. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another unforgettable story. Now, let's begin. Rain drummed steadily against the glass towers of Seoul, turning the city into a glittering sea of reflections. Neon signs shimmered on the wet streets, while commuters hurried beneath umbrellas, each person focused on reaching their destination before the storm grew worse. Amaka Jacob tightened her grip on the strap of her bag as she hurried through the crowded sidewalk. Oh no, 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 no. She glanced at her wristwatch. 8:42 a.m. Her interview was at 9. If I'm late, she muttered under her breath, my mother will somehow sense it from Nigeria. Despite the panic rising inside her, a smile escaped her lips. Her mother had always believed punctuality was a sign of character. Even from thousands of kilometers away, Mrs. Jacob somehow managed to remind Amaka to arrive early for everything. At 28, Amaka had left Lagos behind to pursue a master's degree in architecture in South Korea. The scholarship covered her tuition, but not much else. To make ends meet, she worked late evenings at a cozy cafe, spent nights studying, and sent part of every paycheck home whenever she could. Life wasn't easy, but giving up had never been an option. Today was the biggest opportunity she'd had since arriving in Korea, an interview with one of Seoul's most respected architectural firms. She reached the revolving doors of Hanseong Tower, just as another flash of lightning lit up the gray sky. The building's marble lobby gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. Employees in tailored suits moved briskly across the polished floor, their footsteps echoing through the elegant space. Amaka hurried toward the bank of elevators. One of them was already closing. Please, hold the door. A hand appeared between the closing doors. The sensors beeped. The doors slid open. Thank you, Amaka said breathlessly as she stepped inside. She looked up to thank the stranger. For a heartbeat. She forgot how to breathe. The man standing inside looked as though he'd stepped straight out of a luxury fashion magazine. He was well over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and an athletic build that filled his perfectly tailored charcoal suit effortlessly. But what caught her attention wasn't the expensive watch on his wrist or the polished leather shoes. It was his long, jet black hair, tied neatly into a sleek low ponytail that rested between his shoulder blades. The hairstyle gave him an elegant, commanding presence, making him look less like a businessman and more like a modern Korean prince. His sharp jawline, calm dark eyes, and composed expression completed a face that seemed almost unreal. Yet, despite his striking appearance, there wasn't a trace of arrogance in him. He had simply held the elevator because someone needed help. You're welcome, he said in smooth English, his Korean accent gentle and refined. Amaka blinked. Oh, your English is really good. So is yours, she laughed. I've had 28 years to practice. The faintest smile touched his lips. She pressed the button for the 42nd floor. He pressed 45. The elevator doors closed. Silence settled between them. Amaka shifted awkwardly. She had never liked silence, especially not in enclosed spaces. So, she said, you don't seem like someone who enjoys rainy mornings? He glanced at her. What makes you say that? You looked outside like the weather personally offended you? A soft chuckle escaped him. I had an important meeting. So did I. He looked at her curiously. What kind? An interview. For? Architecture. His eyes brightened with genuine interest. Architecture? She nodded enthusiastically. I've wanted to design buildings since I was 12. What inspired you? My father. What did he do? He was a carpenter. The answer surprised him. He used to tell me that every beautiful building begins with someone brave enough to imagine it first. She smiled sadly. He passed away before I finished university. For a moment, neither of them spoke. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Thank you. She looked out toward the elevator doors. I think he'd have loved Seoul. The stranger nodded thoughtfully. It is a city built by dreamers. Before Amaka could answer, the elevator jerked violently. The lights flickered. Everything went dark. A loud metallic groan echoed through the shaft. Then, Silence. Emergency lights blinked on, bathing the elevator in a dim red glow. The car had stopped. Amaka instinctively reached for the nearest wall. What just happened? The stranger steadied her before she lost her balance. It's okay. The elevator remained perfectly still. A mechanical alarm beeped overhead. Amaka pressed the emergency button. Nothing. She pressed it again. Still nothing. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. The stranger calmly picked up the emergency phone. Static crackled. Finally, a voice answered. There has been a building-wide electrical failure affecting several elevator systems. Please remain calm. Our engineers are working to restore power. How long? Amaka asked. We cannot estimate at this time. The line disconnected. She stared at the receiver. Cannot estimate? That's all they have? The stranger leaned lightly against the wall. They'll fix it. She folded her arms. You sound very confident. I've learned that worrying rarely solves problems. She sighed dramatically. I worry professionally. That earned another small smile. I'm Min-jun. She extended her hand. Amaka Jacob. It's nice to meet you, Miss Jacob. I wish we'd met somewhere with fresh air. He laughed. A real laugh this time. It transformed his entire face. The serious businessman suddenly looked years younger. They talked to distract themselves. Amaka shared stories about Lagos, its vibrant streets, the aroma of roadside suya, family gatherings that lasted until midnight, and her mother's insistence that everyone eat seconds, whether they were hungry or not. Min-jun listened with genuine curiosity. When she finished, he asked, What do you miss the most? She didn't hesitate. Hearing my mother's voice in the kitchen every morning. He looked down briefly. I understand. You do? My parents traveled often when I was growing up. Were they business owners? You could say that. She smiled. You keep answering questions like someone hiding a secret. He chuckled softly. Do I? A little. What if I'm simply private? That's exactly what someone hiding a secret would say. He shook his head, amused. You may have a point. Nearly 40 minutes passed. The rain outside continued to pound against the building. Inside the elevator, the conversation flowed effortlessly. What do you do? Amaka finally asked. Min-jun paused. I manage my family's company. What kind of company? A complicated one. She laughed. That tells me absolutely nothing. It wasn't supposed to. She pointed a playful finger at him. You're impossible. And yet, he replied with a faint smile, you're still talking to me. Before she could answer, she noticed something. His breathing had changed. It was almost imperceptible. His shoulders had stiffened. His hands, which had remained relaxed until now, were tightly clenched at his sides. A tiny bead of sweat rolled down his temple despite the cool air. Min-jun? He looked at her. I'm fine. She wasn't convinced. You don't look fine. It's nothing. She studied him carefully. Then it clicked. He wasn't afraid of the darkness. He wasn't afraid of the silence. He was afraid of being trapped. You're claustrophobic, she said gently. For the first time since they'd met, the calm expression on his face cracked. He looked away without answering. Amaka stepped a little closer, her voice soft enough to calm rather than confront. It's okay. He inhaled slowly but said nothing. Look at me. After a moment, he did. My little brother used to panic during storms, she said. Whenever he felt trapped, I'd distract him. A faint crease formed between Min-jun's brows. How? I'd ask him questions. He gave a weak smile. Did it work? Most of the time. She smiled back. So, she folded her arms with exaggerated seriousness. You told me you tried cooking jollof rice once. He closed his eyes briefly. I regret mentioning that. How bad was it? I accidentally added sugar. Amaka gasped dramatically. You what? I thought it was salt. She burst into uncontrollable laughter. So you made dessert rice? I suppose. Did anyone survive? My assistant ate it. And? He resigned the following week. Her laughter echoed through the stalled elevator. For the first time since the lights went out, Min-jun's breathing steadied. And, without realizing it, Amaka had just become the first person in years to help him forget his fear. Min-jun hadn't realized it until that moment. For years, whenever he found himself trapped in a confined space, memories he desperately tried to bury came rushing back. He was 12 years old again, a frightened little boy locked inside an old elevator during a fire at one of his father's office buildings. Smoke had seeped through the cracks. The emergency lights had failed. For nearly 3 hours, he'd believed he was going to die. Since then, no amount of therapy had completely erased the fear. Only a handful of people knew about it. His personal physician, his childhood bodyguard, his grandfather. No one else. Yet, somehow, a woman he'd met less than an hour ago had instinctively noticed what everyone else missed. She didn't ask embarrassing questions. She didn't pity him. She simply stayed beside him, talking, laughing, making the tiny elevator feel a little less like a prison. "You know," Amaka said, pretending to think deeply, "I should probably report you." Min-jun looked at her in confusion. "For what?" "For disrespecting Yolof Rice." A quiet laugh escaped him. "I've apologized. Not sincerely." "What would qualify as sincere?" "You'll have to eat authentic Nigerian jollof." "I'd like that." The words left his mouth before he could stop them. Amaka blinked. "So, you're inviting yourself?" "I suppose I am." She folded her arms with mock seriousness. "Very bold." "I've been told that before." "You don't seem like someone who's bold." "No. You seem—" She searched for the right word. "Careful." Min-jun smiled faintly. "I usually am." "Then today must be special." He looked directly into her warm brown eyes. "It might be." For just a second, neither of them spoke. The air inside the elevator suddenly felt different. Not uncomfortable, just charged. The silence was broken by a loud mechanical clunk. Both of them looked up. The elevator trembled before slowly beginning to move. "Oh, thank goodness," Amaka sighed. The emergency lights switched off as the normal lighting returned. A cheerful electronic voice announced, 42nd floor. The door slid open. Amaka released a relieved breath. "I actually thought we might have to spend the night in there." Min-jun chuckled. "It wouldn't have been the worst company." She smiled, feeling a strange warmth spread through her chest. "Good luck with your meeting, Mr. Family Business." "And good luck with your interview, Miss Architect." She stepped out of the elevator before turning back. "Oh. Yes? If you ever attempt Nigerian food again—" He raised an eyebrow. "Call me first." "I'll remember that." The doors closed. Amaka hurried toward the reception desk, expecting the worst. Instead, the receptionist greeted her with a smile. "Miss Jacob?" "Yes." "The interview has been delayed." "What?" "One of our executive board members hasn't arrived yet because of the power outage." Amaka almost laughed out loud. "So, I'm not late?" "Not anymore." She whispered a quick prayer of thanks beneath her breath. Maybe today wasn't such a disaster after all. Meanwhile, on the 45th floor, as soon as the elevator doors opened, 6 men in black suits stood waiting. Each bowed respectfully. Chairman Kang. Amaka wasn't there to see it. Min-jun's relaxed smile disappeared instantly. His posture straightened. His expression became unreadable. "Has the board assembled?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "And the investors?" "They're waiting in the conference room." One of the assistants hesitated. "Sir?" Min-jun glanced toward him. "Your grandfather has also arrived." For the first time that morning, a trace of irritation crossed Min-jun's face. "I see." Without another word, he walked toward the executive suite. The employees throughout the hallway immediately stopped what they were doing. Everyone bowed. No one dared make eye contact. Because Kang Min-jun wasn't merely a businessman, he was the youngest chairman in Hansong Group's history. A billionaire whose companies shaped skylines across Asia. And somehow, the woman trapped in the elevator with him had never suspected a thing. The interview lasted almost 2 hours. When it finally ended, Amaka felt cautiously optimistic. One of the architects had been especially impressed by her portfolio. As she packed her sketchbook into her bag, her phone buzzed. "Mama," she answered immediately. "Mama." "My daughter." Her mother's cheerful voice instantly made Amaka smile. "How was the interview?" "I think it went well." "I prayed for you all morning." "I know." "You remembered to smile?" Amaka laughed. "Yes." "You didn't argue with anybody?" "Mama." "I'm only asking." "No, I didn't argue." "Good." Her mother lowered her voice dramatically. "And have you met any handsome Korean man yet?" Amaka nearly choked. "Mama!" "What?" I came here to study. So? So, nothing. Hmm. Her mother clearly didn't believe her. I'll keep praying. For my career? For grandchildren. Mama! Both women burst into laughter. After hanging up, Amaka realized something for the first time in weeks. She genuinely felt happy. That evening, the rain had finally stopped. Golden sunlight broke through the clouds as Amaka returned to her modest apartment building carrying a small grocery bag. She hummed quietly while unlocking the front entrance. The old elevator groaned as it carried her to the 10th floor. When the doors opened, she stepped into the hallway. Just as she reached her apartment, she heard another door unlocking behind her. Curious, she turned, standing across the hallway. Holding a grocery bag in one hand and his apartment keys in the other, was Min-jun. He was no longer wearing his expensive suit jacket. Instead, he wore a fitted black sweater with dark trousers. His long black ponytail rested neatly over one shoulder, making him look even more effortlessly handsome than he had that morning. For a long second, they simply stared at one another. Amaka's eyes widened. No way. Min-jun looked equally surprised. You live here? She pointed back and forth between their apartments. You're my neighbor? He glanced at the apartment numbers before smiling. It would seem so. She laughed in disbelief. This city has almost 10 million people. And yet, we ended up across the hall. What are the odds? She shook her head. I don't believe in coincidences. Neither do I. An awkward silence settled between them. Then Amaka noticed the grocery bag in his hand. She raised an eyebrow. Should I be worried? He looked confused. About what? You bought rice. Yes. You aren't trying to cook jollof again, are you? He sighed dramatically. I was hoping you'd forgotten. I'll never forget. He smiled. In that case, he held up the bag. I bought ingredients. She tilted her head. For what? He looked at her with that same calm expression he'd worn in the elevator. I was wondering if my neighbor would teach me how to make real Nigerian jollof rice? Amaka stared at him, then laughed. You are unbelievably confident. Is that a yes? She pretended to think. I charge expensive cooking lessons. I can afford them. She smiled mischievously. I wasn't talking about money. For the first time all day, Min-jun found himself completely speechless, and Amaka couldn't help smiling. Maybe moving into this apartment building had been the best decision she'd made since coming to Korea. Little did she know. The handsome man standing across the hallway wasn't simply her mysterious neighbor. He was one of the richest men in South Korea. And outside the building, a black luxury sedan had just parked across the street. Inside sat a man wearing dark sunglasses, watching the apartment entrance through a camera lens. He lowered his phone and spoke quietly into an earpiece. I've found Chairman Kang. A brief pause, then he added, and he's spending time with the woman. The call ended. The man started the engine. Someone had begun watching Amaka. She just didn't know it yet. The following Saturday morning, the aroma of onions sizzling in oil drifted through the 10th floor hallway. Min-jun stood in his spacious kitchen, wearing a black apron over a fitted gray sweater. His long, jet-black ponytail was tied higher than usual to keep it away from the food, and he stared at the ingredients spread across the marble island as though they were pieces of an impossible puzzle. He had successfully negotiated billion-dollar contracts. He had convinced skeptical investors to fund projects across 3 continents. Yet somehow, one recipe for jollof rice had defeated him twice. The doorbell rang. He smiled before opening the door. Amaka stood outside carrying 2 shopping bags. I came prepared. She lifted one bag. Fresh thyme. The second. Bay leaves. Then she pointed at him. And a fire extinguisher, just in case. He laughed. I deserve that. She stepped inside and immediately looked around. Unlike most luxury apartments she'd seen online, Min-jun's home wasn't flashy. It was elegant. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Han River, bookshelves lined one wall, and architectural models occupied another. Everything was neat. Almost too neat. You really like clean spaces. I do. She glanced around again. No family photos? A flicker crossed his face before he answered. I don't display many. She didn't press further. Instead, she tied on the apron he'd set aside for her. Okay, Mr. Family Business. I'm listening. Rule number 1. She pointed a wooden spoon at him. You follow instructions. I can do that. Rule number 2. No sugar. He raised both hands. I learned my lesson. They worked side by side. Amaka chopped vegetables while Min-jun carefully measured spices. So, she asked, what exactly does your family's company do? He stirred the tomato base. We build. Houses? Sometimes. Shopping malls? Occasionally. Hotels? A few. She narrowed her eyes. You're still avoiding the question. He smiled. I'm answering it. Not completely. Fair enough. She shook her head. You really are mysterious. And yet, he looked at her. You keep coming back. She pretended to ignore the warmth rising in her cheeks. That's because someone has to stop you from ruining perfectly good rice. An hour later, they sat on the balcony eating from two bowls. Min-jun took his first proper bite. His eyes widened. This, he looked at her in amazement, is incredible. Amaka grinned proudly. I told you. I understand now. Understand what? Why you reacted the way you did in the elevator. She burst into laughter. Exactly. For the first time in years, Min-jun ate without checking his phone, without thinking about meetings, without worrying about shareholders, just good food, good conversation, and the woman sitting across from him. Over the next 3 weeks, a routine quietly formed between them. Some mornings they left for work together. Some evenings they met in the hallway at exactly the same time. Sometimes they'd share dinner. Sometimes they simply sat on the rooftop, watching the lights of Seoul sparkle beneath the night sky. Neither of them called it dating. Neither of them admitted they looked forward to seeing each other every day, but everyone else could see it, especially Mrs. Kim, the 70-year-old widow who lived downstairs. One evening, she caught them carrying groceries together. She smiled knowingly. You two make a beautiful couple. Amaka almost dropped the shopping bag. We're not a couple. Mrs. Kim chuckled. Not yet. Min-jun politely bowed. Have a pleasant evening. As soon as the older woman disappeared into the elevator, Amaka looked at him. Why didn't you deny it? I thought you already had. That's not the point. He smiled. I didn't mind. Her heartbeat skipped. The following Monday, Amaka arrived at Hand Design Studio for her first official day as an intern. Her supervisor greeted her warmly. Welcome aboard. Thank you. We're actually heading to an important presentation this morning. Already? You'll mostly observe. She eagerly followed the team. Their destination, the headquarters of Hansong Group, the tallest corporate building in Seoul. Amaka admired the breathtaking architecture as they entered the grand lobby. This place is beautiful. It should be? Her supervisor smiled. Our firm hopes to design their next international headquarters. They stepped into a private elevator reserved for guests. Minutes later, the doors opened onto the executive floor. Employees moved with remarkable precision. Everyone seemed unusually tense. A receptionist suddenly stood. The chairman is coming. Every employee immediately formed 2 lines. Everyone bowed. Amaka frowned. Who's the chairman? Before anyone answered, the doors at the end of the hallway opened. Footsteps echoed across the marble floor. She looked up, and her world stopped. Walking toward them, surrounded by executives in black suits, was Min-jun, except he looked nothing like the relaxed neighbor who laughed over burnt rice. Today he wore a perfectly tailored midnight black suit. His long black ponytail rested neatly against his back. His expression was calm, cold, commanding, powerful. Every executive followed half a step behind him. No one spoke unless spoken to. As he approached, the entire hallway bowed. Good morning, Chairman Kong. Amaka stared. No, it couldn't be. Min-jun looked up for the briefest second. Their eyes met. She expected surprise. Instead, his calm expression barely changed. Only his eyes softened, almost imperceptibly. Then, professionalism returned. He continued walking, the executives followed. Within seconds, he disappeared into the boardroom. Amaka stood frozen. Her supervisor leaned closer. That's Chairman Kang Min-jun. She swallowed. Chairman? The youngest billionaire in South Korea? The words struck her like lightning. Be billionaire? Her supervisor nodded. Hansung Group owns construction companies, technology firms, hotels, shipping lines. Amaka wasn't listening anymore. Her mind replayed every conversation they'd shared. I manage my family's company. A complicated one. He hadn't lied. He just hadn't told her the whole truth. Inside the boardroom, the presentation began. But Min-jun wasn't paying attention. He was thinking about the expression on Amaka's face. She knew. Finally, she knew who he was. His grandfather, Kang Seung-ho, noticed immediately. Something distracting you? No. You looked at someone. Min-jun remained silent. The elderly chairman smiled knowingly. Interesting. The meeting ended 2 hours later. Amaka walked toward the lobby in a daze. She needed answers. She stepped outside. Rain had started falling again. She barely noticed. A black sedan slowly rolled past the building. Inside? The same man in sunglasses watched her through a camera. He raised his phone. Chairman Kang's neighbor has discovered his identity? A voice answered through the speaker. Good. What are your orders? A pause, then came the chilling reply. If she becomes a problem, eliminate her. The line went dead. The man started the engine. Across the street, Amaka had no idea someone had just been ordered to kill her. She simply stood beneath the rain, wondering one thing. Why had Min-jun hidden the truth from her? The rain soaked Amaka's hair as she stood outside Hanseong Group's headquarters. She barely noticed. Only one thought echoed through her mind. He lied to me. No, not exactly. He had never claimed to be an ordinary office worker. He had simply answered every question carefully, revealing only what he wanted her to know. I manage my family's company. A complicated one. She let out a frustrated laugh. Complicated? He owns half the city. That evening, the hallway between their apartments felt strangely quiet. Amaka unlocked her door, hoping to slip inside unnoticed. Amaka. She stopped. Min-jun stood outside his apartment, still wearing his tailored black suit. His long, jet-black ponytail rested neatly over one shoulder, though a few loose strands framed his face after the rainy day. For the first time since she'd met him, there was uncertainty in his eyes. Can we talk? She looked at him for a long moment. 5 minutes. He nodded. That's all I ask. They sat on opposite ends of his living room. Neither spoke immediately. Finally, Amaka broke the silence. So, she looked around. You weren't joking when you said your company was complicated? A faint smile appeared before disappearing again. I suppose not. You let me believe you were just another businessman. I let you believe I was someone you could get to know before my title got in the way. She frowned. That wasn't your decision to make. I know. I trusted you. You still can. She shook her head. How? You don't even know who I am. Min-jun leaned forward. The man who got trapped in an elevator with you? That was who I really am. She looked into his eyes. There wasn't arrogance, there wasn't pride, only sincerity. I hide my identity because most people don't see me. They see my companies, my money, my family name. He looked down briefly. You never did. You argued with me about jollof rice. You laughed at me. You made me feel normal. He met her gaze again. I didn't want to lose that. The anger inside Amaka slowly faded. She realized something. Every kind gesture, every shared meal, every laugh. None of those moments had been fake. Only his title had been hidden. Days passed. Slowly, their friendship found its way back. But something had changed. It had become deeper, more honest. One Friday evening, Min-jun knocked on her door. I have something to show you. 20 minutes later, his car stopped in front of a breathtaking piece of land overlooking the Han River. The skyline glittered in the distance. What is this place? Amaka asked. Min-jun handed her a rolled blueprint. She opened it. Her eyes widened. It was a community center, beautifully designed, modern, environmentally sustainable. Children's learning spaces, public gardens, affordable housing connected to it. She looked at him in disbelief. You designed this? He smiled. I started it. But he gently pointed to the empty title block. I want you to finish it. Amaka stared at him. Me? You once told me your father believed every beautiful building begins with someone brave enough to imagine it? He smiled warmly. I think he'd be proud of you. Tears filled her eyes. No one had ever believed in her dreams this deeply. I don't know what to say. Say yes. She laughed through her tears. Yes. Weeks later, construction began. For the first time, Amaka saw another side of Min-jun. He wasn't feared because he was rich. He was respected because he remembered everyone's name. He greeted security guards before executives. He ate lunch with construction workers. He quietly paid for the surgery of an employee's daughter without telling anyone. The newspapers called him cold. Amaka knew better. His kindness simply preferred privacy. Unfortunately, not everyone wanted him to succeed. Late one evening, Amaka stayed behind at the construction site reviewing revised drawings. The workers had already gone home. She didn't notice the black SUV pulling into the underground parking area. 3 men stepped out. One of them was the same man who had been watching her apartment. "Miss Jacob." She turned. "Can I help you?" Instead of answering, the man pulled a knife. "Come with us." Fear shot through her. She ran. Her footsteps echoed through the unfinished structure. The men chased her between concrete columns. She reached a dead end. Her breathing became frantic. One attacker grabbed her arm. She struggled desperately. "Let me go!" A powerful voice echoed across the building. "Take your hands off her." The men turned. Min-jun stood several meters away. His expression was unlike anything Amaka had ever seen. Calm, but terrifying. Behind him, his security team rushed in. The attackers lunged. Min-jun moved with astonishing speed. Years of martial arts training took over. He disarmed the first. Man with a precise strike sent the knife skidding across the concrete and drove the second attacker back before security officers restrained him. The third tried to flee. He didn't get far. Within seconds, all 3 men were in handcuffs. Amaka's knees gave way. Min-jun reached her just before she hit the ground. "It's okay." His voice, usually so composed, trembled slightly. "I've got you." She looked up at him. "You came." "I always will." The investigation uncovered the truth. A rival executive within Hanseong Group had hired the men. He believed hurting Amaka would force Min-jun to step away from an important merger. Instead, the evidence exposed years of corruption. The executive was arrested. The conspiracy collapsed. For the first time in years, Min-jun's company was finally free of the people who had betrayed his family's trust. Several months later, the community center opened. Hundreds of families gathered for the ceremony. Children laughed as they ran through the gardens. Parents explored classrooms filled with natural light. A bronze plaque stood proudly near the entrance. Designed by Amaka Jacob architect, she traced her fingers across her name. "I still can't believe this." "You earned it," Min-jun said. She turned toward him. The evening sun illuminated his face, and a gentle breeze stirred the loose strands escaping his long black ponytail. "You know," she smiled, "you still owe me something." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "You never answered my question." "Which one?" "When exactly did you fall in love with me?" He laughed softly. "The truth?" She nodded. "It wasn't when you helped me through my claustrophobia?" She blinked. "It wasn't?" He shook his head. "It wasn't when you became my neighbor." She waited patiently. "It was the moment you laughed so hard after I confessed I ruined jollof rice with sugar?" She burst into laughter all over again. "Seriously?" "You laughed without caring who I was." He stepped closer. "You saw a man. Not a billionaire. You made me feel ordinary." His voice softened. "And that's all I'd ever wanted." Amaka reached for his hand. "Then I should tell you something too." "What?" "I think I started falling for you. The moment you held that elevator door." He smiled. Slowly. He brushed a loose curl away from her face. "May I?" She nodded. He kissed her gently. Not because he was a billionaire, not because she was beautiful, but because 2 strangers had once shared an hour inside a broken elevator and discovered that sometimes the smallest delays lead to the greatest blessings. 1 year later, the 10th floor hallway buzzed with excitement. Mrs. Kim clapped her hands as neighbors gathered outside 2 familiar apartment doors decorated with flowers. Amaka adjusted the sleeve of her elegant white dress and looked down the hallway. Min-jun stood waiting for her in a tailored black tuxedo. His long, jet-black ponytail was neatly tied, just as it had been the day they first met. He smiled the same warm smile that had once appeared inside a stalled elevator. She walked toward him. He reached for her hand. "This time," he whispered, "we're not getting stuck in an elevator." She laughed. "No. We're stepping into the next chapter." Hand in hand, they walked forward together as their family and friends cheered. Sometimes fate doesn't arrive with fireworks or grand declarations. Sometimes it simply asks you to step into an elevator and trust that even an unexpected delay might be leading you exactly where you're meant to be.